Welcome back to the channel. This will be the best Limitless team for Matchday 13, the first leg of the quarterfinals. If you still have this chip remaining, I'd probably use it in Matchday 13 or 14. The earlier this chip is utilized, the better. And I've always been of the opinion that using it between Matchdays 2 to 7 is the ideal time to do so. And if you also have the wildcard chip, you might have to prioritize that first because you could have a lot of eliminated players or suspension risks, injury concerns and all of that. So you use the wildcard in Matchday 13 and then the Limitless in Matchday 14 for the first leg of each round of the competition. So the quarterfinals, semi-finals and the Champions League final, you get 5 free transfers. And for the second leg, you only get 3 available moves. Smash the like button of this video and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy the content. Our aim is to get this to 200 likes and to keep on pushing towards new goals like 33,000 subscribers. Check all the links in the description below, which includes the UCL Fantasy League, which you can see on screen, and there's an auto-join link as well, which makes it even easier to join. Check out my X, Instagram and Blue Sky, Dylan RCM, and join as a patron or channel member. The links are also in the description. But without further ado, let's jump straight into it. The Limitless chip has been a key factor of UCL Fantasy for many years now, and if you have played the Euros or the World Cup, then it's also been a big part of those fantasy formats too. And in terms of the free hit chip from FPL, it is identical to this Limitless because it's one match day only, then your team reverts to how it was before you activate the chip. But in this case with the Limitless, you have no budget restrictions whatsoever, so you can go for the most expensive players in each position, and that's why the kind of more advanced you get in this Champions League tournament, the kind of less effective the Limitless will be, because you might find yourself actually still being within budget whilst using this chip, but it can bail you out of certain situations with injury, suspensions, and also eliminated players. So let's start off with the 2 goalkeepers. And in terms of the Tuesday choice, it is quite difficult because some of the best options are injury doubts for the quarterfinals. During the recent international break, Manuel Neuer suffered a setback, so there is a slight concern about him being available against Inter Milan, but I think the Italian side will go into this game very defensive and trying to keep Bayern Munich kind of quite low scoring, and they are quite a defensive team in general. So I do think that could suit the likes of Kim Min-jae and all these Bayern Munich defenders, as well as Manuel Neuer in goal. And I think his return would be a massive boost to the Bavarians, who suffered a key injury on Friday night to Musiala, who scored in that game, but he is now going to be out for the next 8 weeks, according to several reports like Sky Sports Germany, and he's going to miss both matches against Inter Milan. So I think Neuer is the best Tuesday goalkeeper, but if he isn't fit, and this will be covered in my deadline stream on Tuesday, then I'd probably go for Thibaut Courtois personally. But in this kind of matchup between Arsenal and Real Madrid, you might favour the Gunners in the home game at least, but I don't really share that opinion, to be quite honest with you. And you look at Jan Sommer, he's another good option, to be fair. I think any of the Tuesday goalkeepers are viable, and if this was a long-term pick like the wildcard, I would give a completely different answer to both Manuel Neuer and also David Raya. But I think it's very close between all those Tuesday goalkeepers, and my favourite is Manuel Neuer if he's fit. As for the Wednesday, I think there's a clear standout in Wojciech Szczesny, but the alternative is Donnarumma with a home game against Aston Villa. But I would favour Barcelona a little bit more for the clean sheet, despite the fact that over the course of the season they have shown vulnerabilities defensively, and that high line obviously prioritises their attack, and they can be left exposed on the counter and in transitions. But Szczesny has been very solid in the last couple of months. He had a shaky start to his Barcelona career, but he is now fully up to speed and he's putting in some big performances for the Catalans. So my favourite goalkeepers, if they're fit, are Manuel Neuer and Wojciech Szczesny for Matchday 13 only. And if you want someone a bit longer term for the Tuesday goalkeeper, I think Thibaut Courtois, who might not even start against Arsenal, it's between him and Lunin. That would be the way I'd go in the long term. You might favour Bayern Munich to go through or at least win the first leg, with the Bavarians being at home, and that's completely understandable, but I'd still recommend one Inter Milan defender or Jan Sommer in goal. Denzel Dumfries would have been my preference over Bastoni, but he's going to be out for the next 3 to 4 weeks, so I think the Italian offers a kind of set and forget option from now until when Inter Milan are eliminated or go on to reach the Champions League final, and they've got a decent chance. They have a very solid defensive line and they are very well organised, which makes them very tough to score against. So I think Bastoni is a decent choice, but I do admit he's not the most exciting of picks, and ultimately you might be looking at the likes of DeMarco or Carlos Augusto instead. I just think Bastoni is a safe set and forget option, but Jan Sommer is ultimately the best way to cover Inter Milan defensively. Let's now go on to more exciting options, with Hakimi getting 5 assists in this Champions League season. Only Joshua Kimmich has more in this competition, and he does face Aston Villa at home, who are in great form with 7 consecutive victories. So it might be a little bit of a risk to go all in on PSG, which is my current strategy, and that's something that might have to be reconsidered, and there are many different ways of playing this game, so whether you're using the Limitless, the Wildcard, or using free transfers, you might want to balance things a little bit more than I'm doing in these videos. But Hakimi for me is still an option I'd highly recommend, even if you are backing Aston Villa to go through, and PSG are so strong. Only one defeat since late November, and that was against Liverpool, and they still got the job done and went through to the next round. I'd also recommend a second PSG defender, or Donnarumma in goal, who is my second favourite Wednesday goalkeeper, but Nuno Mendes has the attacking threat, and he only trails Hakimi in terms of UCL fantasy points amongst defenders. William Bachel's another great option with the ball recoveries, and he's also more accessible. So on the wild card, I think Bachel over Nuno Mendes will be a key difference. But because the budget is no longer a concern with this chip, you can go for the most expensive players and the most exciting ones. And Nuno Mendes has an ownership figure of 8%, which makes him very appealing to say the least. But let's now go on to other options, and that includes Kim Min-jae and another defensive double-up. I know Inter Milan are a good side and they can score goals, but I just think the way the game's going to go, I think they're going to be very defensive, and it could be very low scoring, maybe a 1-0 to Bayern Munich, or it could be 0-0 in the end. You just never know. But ultimately, I just don't see Inter Milan scoring many goals, at least in Germany. That could be a different story in the second leg going into matchday 14. But that's just my opinion of how the game's going to go. And if Manuel Neuer is not fit, I already discussed the alternatives on the Tuesday, and some of you might be thinking, I want that Arsenal defensive coverage with David Raya in goal, or maybe Saliba in that defensive line. And for those that haven't seen my FPL content, Gabriel did pick up a hamstring problem. He had surgery and he'll be out for the rest of the season. So that is another big blow. He was also being considered in this defensive line, and Upamecano is currently an injury doubt going into the first leg against Inter Milan. He didn't feature on Friday, whilst Kim Min-jae partnered Eric Dyer in central defence. But the final defender I'm going for is from Barcelona, and that means yet another defensive double-up, and that's going to be Jules Koundé. I know some of you might be thinking we need more coverage from Real Madrid defensively, Arsenal and Aston Villa, and on the wild card you could definitely go for some of these options, but if you're looking at matchday 13 only, I think these teams have the best chance of a clean sheet. And even with Inter Milan, they're so solid defensively that they can get a surprise one when you least expect them to. But I think Jules Koundé is the best Barcelona defender because of ball recoveries, and whilst they haven't been at the same level as previous seasons, he is still operating at a high level. Inigo Martinez is another solid shout in that defence, but I think Jules Koundé is worth the extra millions, and on the wild card, that would be a concern of course with budget, but on the Limitless, it's a different story. There are fewer options to choose from in the midfield, with Florian Wirtz and Mohamed Salah being eliminated and Jamal Musiala missing the next 8 weeks worth of action. But I think Bukayo Saka on the Limitless could be a perfect pick. He scored on his return against Fulham as a substitute to give Arsenal the victory, and he also played 45 minutes against Everton. He came on in the second half, and I think he'll start against Real Madrid. And I would favour him slightly over Bellingham for this match day only, but on the wild card, I would go for Jude Bellingham because I expect Real Madrid to go through, and I also think Bellingham over both legs will probably outscore Saka. But at the Emirates, I think the English winger, the star boy, has a higher ceiling, and he's got a great Champions League record at home, and we saw what he did this season against the likes of Monaco, for example, and even in the last campaign he scored against Bayern Munich in the first leg of the quarterfinals. He's got an extremely strong home record at the Emirates, so I think Saka is definitely worth a punt, and on the Limitless, that's a key difference to differentiate itself from those wildcarders and also those using free transfers. His ownership is actually very low because he has been injured for quite a while now. He has gone up to 5%, so it looks like there is a bit of investment going on, and we could see this rise to double figures, perhaps to 10% by the deadline, but I think Saka is a great option here for matchday 13. Next up is going to be Ousmane Dembele, and whilst the likes of Kvaratskhelia and Barcola are solid options, Dembele is the one scoring the vast majority of goals. He remains the top scorer of 2025 of any player in world football, and he is scoring braces and hat-tricks for fun, and even off the bench, he can make an immediate impact. He also scored against Liverpool at Anfield, which brought that game to penalties, and PSG ended up triumphant. I would also recommend a cheaper midfielder and not being too bogged down in terms of who are the most expensive players and just going for them in your setup, because having Bellingham and Saka simultaneously could work out for you, and because they both play on the Tuesday, you can sub them off for those yet to play on the Wednesday, so that is a decent strategy. But I would recommend Elise instead, who also plays on that Tuesday against Inter Milan, and there is no decision to make in terms of Musiala or Elise because the former is out for the next couple of weeks, and he could even miss a potential semi-final there for Bayern Munich. So that's a massive blow there for them. Joshua Kimmich is a decent shout. He's the top assister in the Champions League this season, but I think Elise is a step above. He plays in more advanced positions and is getting more goals and assists on a regular basis. But the key component of this midfield is a Barcelona midfield double-up, which includes Rafinha, who has been in virtually every single one of these Limitless and Wildcard videos. He got humbled by Argentina during the international break, but he is still a great player. And Barcelona did draw this weekend and failed to capitalise fully on Real Madrid's slip-up. They lost 2-1 at home to Valencia, so that was another huge shock. But the Catalans are in pole position to win the La Liga title, and Rafinha's been a key component of that. And in the Champions League, he's been even better, and that's why he's currently leading the Ballon d'Or race over the likes of Salah and Harry Kane, who would be the other kind of standouts in terms of individual performances. But next up is going to be the star of Matchday 12, in my opinion, but he somehow didn't win the Player of the Match award, and that's Lamine Yamal, who is very template with a 45% ownership figure. But I still think a lot of us, maybe you watching this video and myself included, don't have Yamal as things stand, but that could certainly change. I've got the wildcard in my back pocket, and the plan is to use it this week, so be sure to tune in to my team selection and of course check out the best wildcard squad. But I think both Yamal and Rafinha tick all the boxes and can be always included in your squad irrespective of your chip strategy. Only 6 points separate Vinicius Jr. and Mbappe in UCL Fantasy. I think the Brazilians started this campaign very well in the Champions League, but has slowly tailed off, whilst Mbappe had a kind of average start, but he is now stepping it up. We saw that in action against Man City in the knockout playoff rounds, and he hasn't really looked back ever since. But I think it's a very close call, but I'd probably prefer Mbappe in the grand scheme of things, especially on a wild card. And Vinicius missed a penalty against Valencia, and Carlo Ancelotti was asked about penalty duties going forwards, and he said we'll see when asked about if Mbappe will become the number one penalty taker. So that is a distinct possibility from now until the end of the season, and that could also define who is the best UCL fantasy asset between Vinicius Jr. and Kylian Mbappe. But in terms of ownership, if you want to go a little bit different, Vinicius has 26% ownership compared to Mbappe's 37%, but I think both of them will rise with limited options, you could say, up front compared to before, and I think we're all going to gravitate towards the same three forwards, but you still have plenty of options like Guirassy, who scored off the bench in a 4-1 win for Borussia Dortmund. You've got Lewandowski, Harry Kane, possibly Lautaro Martinez, but a lot of these teams also have their injury concerns as well to contend with across all positions, which might play a key part in the Champions League quarterfinals. Next up is Harry Kane. I'd still highly recommend him, despite how resolute Inter Milan are defensively, and Kane is having another stellar season with the goal-scoring numbers. He is scoring the penalties as well. He is an expert penalty taker, and from open play, he is also scoring at a very healthy rate. So he is one of the best strikers in Europe right now. You might even say he's the best one, and he's also competing with Mbappe for the Ballon d'Or. So I think both of them are great options on this Limitless. But like I mentioned before, you can go for Vinicius instead of Mbappe. Having both of them at the same time is another decent strategy, but with the other options we've got, and there is one key name missing, I'd still recommend having one Real Madrid forward and possibly Bellingham in the midfield. But let's complete this forward line with Robert Lewandowski, who is going to face his former club Borussia Dortmund, and Barcelona are the heavy favourites in this tie, and they've got a great chance to reach the Champions League final, in my opinion. Their bracket has stood out from the beginning as quite accessible compared to the likes of Real Madrid and those on the other side of the draw. But I think having 2 or 3 Barcelona attackers looks very strong for the quarterfinals, and then adding one defender, possibly Szczesny in goal as well. And Barcelona are one of the few teams that I'd kind of go for 5 players from, in my opinion, because you can now pick 5 players from the same team, and this increases at each stage of the competition. So for the semi-finals, you can pick 6 players from a single club, and then 8 for the Champions League final. And I think Barcelona are one of those teams you really want to invest in every single round of this competition. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below in terms of the best captains on the Tuesday and the Wednesday, and what would you change with this Limitless team. Of course, on the wildcard there will be some key changes which will be addressed in that respective video, but let's discuss the captaincy very quickly. On the Tuesday, whilst Harry Kane is solid, and you've also got the likes of Elise and a few decent options there, I would probably go for one of Bukayo Saka or Kylian Mbappe as my captain. I think Arsenal versus Real Madrid could be fairly high scoring. I'd be quite surprised if that ends up being a low scoring affair, but then again, the Gunners do have a good defence. I just worry for them with the absence of Gabriel, who is such a massive presence in the Arsenal defensive line. And on the Wednesday, I would go for a Barcelona attacker, and who that is completely up to you. But my preference has always been Rafinha, and he has been doing the job more often than not. So he'd be my first pick. The Robert Lewandowski is a close second. I'd put Dembele above Yamal in those captaincy rankings on the Wednesday. So I think I'd ultimately go for the likes of Mbappe and Saka on the Tuesday, with Mbappe being a slight preference. And then I'd go for Rafinha, Lewandowski and Dembele on the Wednesday. But you can't even forget Harry Kane. He is still a decent option against Inter Milan, but I think his ceiling will be lower than the other options I've just highlighted. So there you go. That is the best Limitless team for Matchday 13. This will put you in good stead for the first leg of the quarterfinals. And if you also watch my other content like the team selection and the best wildcard team, you will have a great idea of what you need to do for Matchday 13. And there we have it. The best Limitless team for UCL Fantasy has been covered. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. And thank you very much for watching this video and listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it or found it insightful, then like this video, subscribe to the channel, and also hit the notification bell so don't miss a single upload or live stream, both FPL and UCL Fantasy. Follow me on X, Instagram and Blue Sky, Dylan RCM, and check all the links in the description below for my Patreon and the championships, for early access to my videos, amongst many other perks. The Discord server, UCL Fantasy League and Spotify can also be found in the description. I'll see you on Tuesday for another deadline stream, and keep your eyes peeled for the best wildcard squad and my team selection.